Project Plus, Subject 4, update May 17, 2019. We've had some progress this week. Until yesterday, things were looking good. The lesions were starting to lessen in the upper half of the body. We've been aggressive with the antibiotic. That was having some effect on the smaller blisters, but the more severe lesions continued. Subject 4's muscles were recovering quickly. We believe it was the anabolic steroid injections and consider the clinical trials confirmed. The attempts to balance the fluids in the prefrontal cortex failed. The formula was too extreme. There was too much serotonin and it brought about violent tendencies. Subject managed to tear away from the bonds and went on a rampage. One intern was wounded, a second one mauled, and Subject 4 was terminated after 5 months as part of Project Plus. Subject 1 lasted 7 weeks before termination for the same reason. Subject 3 was terminated after 4 months from multiple seizures after surgery. Subject 2 was suicide, so it's unimportant. Notes for Subject 5. The first 4 subjects were all male and we should continue this trend. This time find a younger subject, mid-teens if possible, from a less hostile background. It may increase the possibility that they will be missed, but a rule setting will also make them easier to take without being traced. We also should begin the brain alterations in the first week, not the second month, to get a better lead on the serotonin problems. In addition, we should work harder to avoid the facial deformities we encountered with the previous subjects. We don't want people thinking there are monsters here.
That's it. I'm going to do it. I don't care anymore.
Whoa, slow down. That's a big step. There's no coming back from something like that. First, why don't you tell me your name?
Jason Duquino.
Okay, Jason. My name's Justine. Now, do you want to tell me what's going on?
Not really.
Well, you called this number for a reason, Jason. So why don't you tell me why you're doing this way?
It's just, well, nobody likes me.
Why do you feel like nobody likes you, Jason?
Well, I hardly have any friends. And the ones that I do have never talk to me unless I initiate conversation first. But even then, they don't like what I say.
It sounds like you're having trouble connecting with people. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And also, it seems like everybody else is in a relationship besides me.
I know it may feel that way, but believe it or not, there are actually more single people than in a relationship. Maybe you just haven't found that special someone yet. Have you tried connecting with people you may know?
Of course I have. But I always come off like a creep. So I just don't try anymore.
Okay, Jason. So let me just be clear. It sounds like you have put up a wall here, and you're only allowing yourself access. You're having trouble connecting with others. Does this sound correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Jason, I think I see the problem here.
Really? Am I doomed to die?
Oh, no, not at all. I think people are actually trying to connect with you, but are unable to. I think you just need to update your privacy settings. It appears as though you've blocked everyone from connecting with you.
Okay, but how do I do that?
It's quite simple. Just go under privacy settings and either make your profile public or set each category to your liking under the custom settings.
Wow. No, I had no idea it was this easy. Thanks, Justine.
You're very welcome, Jason. Is there anything else I can do for you?
I mean, actually, if it's not too much, do you think maybe you could add me as a friend?
Ew, no, you creep. What's wrong with you?
Hello? Justine?
When they found me, I was in the fetal position under a desk. They figured I'd been there at least an hour and most of the blood had dried. I barely remember the officer who offered a hand to me. I shivered uncontrollably and wouldn't take it. I remember what I think were his arms embracing me, and then there's a blur as they raced me to the ambulance. The gun was called a 45 caliber Glock. It was barely 8 inches long and just 5.5 inches tall. Tall. Is that the right word? Either way, it was small enough he could fit it into a jacket pocket. Nobody saw it until he was inside. In the ambulance, they started wiping the dried blood off my face and asking me questions. I've been told I just nodded and shook my head. I couldn't speak, but answered their questions. Green eyes. I remember the dark-haired woman with the green eyes looking so relieved for a second, and then it was like they darkened when she realized just what had happened. The blood wasn't mine. God, Timothy, what are you doing? 10 snaps, 10 thuds, and 100 screams. Then he reloaded. The gun you talked about, the one you got for your birthday. You were 11, they gave you a gun. They said Timothy had stopped taking his meds a week earlier. He hid them so his parents didn't know. I promised my parents I will never, ever stop taking mine. I remember the screams. Those horrible screams. All night long they screamed. I asked the nurse to stop the screams. Mommy said the screams were mine. The school isn't there anymore. They took it down. It's a playground now. Sometimes I can remember every brick and every door and every hallway. Sometimes I can't remember the color of the chairs. One more year and I'll graduate. I'll go to the university because they have a great music program. I like singing. I sing all the time now. I've even won contests. I sleep good. I run daily and I'm on the honor roll. My boyfriend keeps telling me I'm too smart for him. I never let him forget that either. I've learned to live with it. I've learned to accept. I've learned to forget. There is one habit I just can't break. Clean, clean, clean. They called me the White Tornado because I always clean my hands. Sometimes, in the dark moments, I could swear I smelled blood. I just keep cleaning to make the smell go away.
Are we on? Are we? Okay. Welcome to this edition of It's Not Easy, the show that takes an in-depth look at people and groups in our society with difficult and unusual lifestyles and jobs. Tonight, we have horrific undead flesh eaters. Please help me welcome Zach the Zombie. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, I suppose you get made fun of quite a bit for that.
For what?
Well, for being a zombie named Zach.
Not really. It's it's never come up before.
I suppose I'm bringing it up now.
Yes, I suppose you are.
Now, Zach, how long have you been a zombie?
I have been a zombie. It'll be 4 months next Wednesday.
And when did you first realize that you were a zombie?
Well, for me, it was actually rather quick. I had been on the run from the mob for some time, and one day I took a wrong turn in a dead-end alley, and that was it.
Huh. Guess they should call it an undead end. Now, Zach, then what happened?
Well, I stumbled around for a little bit. I was disoriented. I wasn't quite sure what was going on, but after a couple of hours, I realized what had happened.
Had you previously thought about being a zombie?
Well, it was something that me and my family had to consider, yes, being on the run from the mob for so long.
Sure. Now, did it take time to adjust?
Well, I went through the usual stages of grief. There was denial, there was bargaining, of course, but at the end of the day, I just got hungry, and that was the end of it.
It's the same way I get when I'm hungry.
I know the feeling, trust me. But there are some people who, it takes a longer time for them to adjust to being a zombie. It makes it very hard for them to believe. It's religious people, pacifists, vegetarians, all have terrible times admitting being zombies. The worst by far are the Donald Trump supporters. We have focus groups for them because we don't know how to get them to realize that they're zombies now, and they're just following the next empty brain to the next. It's sad.
I'm sure my wife would be that way.
Matrimony makes the undead of us all, Alan.
Now, that actually brings us to the subject of human brains. Now, Zach, what do human brains taste like?
A lot like chicken.
Really?
Yeah.
You have a weird look in your eyes, Zach.
Do I? Do I?
Are some brains more edible than others?
Well, they're all the same amount of edible, but they same texture, same tenderness. But there are some brains, Alan, that leave an aftertaste.
An aftertaste?
Yes, an aftertaste. French people, for instance, have a bad taste about them. And then we have drug addicts, meth users, alcoholics. They have interestingly, a tangy flavor to their brains. Now, as you can imagine, there are some brains that get stale from lack of use.
Of course.
And I'm sure you know the type. There are certain politicians, business leaders, Fox News commentators.
Are there any brains that taste better than others?
Yes, actually, it's good that you mentioned that. In geniuses and creative people, because they're more used, you see. And British people have a nice and fruity flavor about them. And
Really?
homosexuals, yes.
Homosexuals?
The more active and more open-minded the brain is, the fresher the brain.
Of course. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Now, what would you say is the most misunderstood part about zombie culture?
I'm so glad you asked me about that, Alan. The most misunderstood part about our culture that live people always make is that just because we eat brains, it doesn't mean that we don't have them. We do, we all do.
You do?
Yes, and there have even been attempts in our culture to set up forms of higher education.
Like a zombie kindergarten or a zombie university?
Yes, precisely.
Well, hopefully I can sign up for those classes online.
Perhaps after this broadcast.
Now, are there interpersonal relationships between zombies?
Yes, there are. And that is another mistake that live people tend to make about us, and that
course.
just because we eat brains, it doesn't mean that we don't have hearts or other natural desires.
Desires? Now, Zach, I gotta ask, do zombies,
Well, it can happen, yes. It can happen if the time and the place are right that we do.
Are there zombie babies?
Yes, that also can happen if we don't use the proper protection, but it brings up an interesting problem in zombie culture because we occasionally produce bright and fresh offspring.
Well, what happens then?
Well, we usually eat them.
Well, that's all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank Zach for coming on the show tonight. Next week, we have blood-sucking creatures trapped in an eternal night with special guest Dick Cheney in It's Not Easy Being a Vampire. I'm your host, Alan Allenson. Thank you and good night.
Most what you see on there will be Alan.
Not Bill. Alan. That's Bill. Yeah, this is the teleprompter. It's Alan. Huh.
This wasn't in the script. I don't know what
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Oh shit. Yeah.
Damn, I
See, Ashley, this is what you're missing. See, Ashley, I'm interviewing zombies
Ashley,
now.
if you're out there, please take me back. Don't tell my wife. Are we on? Are we? Okay. Well, it's just the line, Bill. Okay. Welcome to this edition of It's Not Easy, the show that takes an in-depth look at people and groups in our society with difficult and unusual lifestyles and jobs. Tonight, we have horrific undead flesh eaters. Please help me welcome Zach the Zombie. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Good to see you, Bill. Alan Dix, my bad. Rewind. Bill Murray thing stuck in my head, so I'm just like, thank you, Bill. Thank you so much.
I was gonna go with Dick Johnson.
My apologies.
Okay. I'd like to thank Zach for being on our show with us tonight. Next week, we have creatures trapped in the...
That's okay, we got that one.
Yeah, we've got like 7.